Hello, good morning everyone. I'll briefly provide a recap like what we have discussed in last two classes. So in first class we talked about what history as a discipline basically mean. And we discussed that history, for example, when I use the word historical period, then basically means that the writing has started. People know about writing and the writing has started. Before that, we use prehistory. So in prehistory, our major source is archaeology, right? Archaeology does remain a very important source even for historical period, but for prehistory, it is our only source. And then even from prehistory and historical period, there is a small phase called proto-history. Especially for India, we can use this term for Indus Valley civilization, where we do know that writing existed, but we have not been able to decipher that writing, okay? So that was in fact our first main topic, even though we talked about prehistoric period and a lot of locations, but जो Indus Valley civilization है वो सबसे important topic है हमारे लिए prelims या mains examination किसी भी चीज़ के लिए. So we talked about various features of Indus Valley civilization, and I also told you that all of these features, how do we know? We only know it from archaeological sources, not from the fact that we have been able to decipher anything from written records. But even with the help of archaeology, lot of conclusions have been made. For example, we talked about the features of urbanization. We talked about what type of technological development we are talking about. We talked about the fact that they had a great trade relationship with many other contemporary civilization. Even in fact, we had some conclusions regarding their social hierarchy or regarding the type of religion they practiced, things like that, okay? We also talked about that why the civilization declined. So, ये main themes हैं जो अभी तक हमने डिस्कस करा है. And in the last class I also told you that a group of tribe known as Aryan tribe, and I told you that Aryan is a linguistic term, not a ethnic term or not a religious term, but a linguistic term. Linguistic term basically means that people who are speaking common set of languages. There may be differentiations here and there may be some differences, but more or less the language is very same, and it can be called जो जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल जो ऋग वेदा का जो लैंग्वेज जो संस्कृत है, दैट इज क्लासिकल संस्कृत, वी कैन यूज इट. एंड क्लासिकल संस्कृत, एंड दिस इज ऑल्सो वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू appreciate that language also evolves. Language, it has its own age. Language takes birth, it matures, and many times languages also die. So for example, जो ऋग वेदा का जो क्लासिकल संस्कृत है and जो later texts होंगे, I'm going to talk about some later texts, like let's say for example, one of the grand texts of Sanskrit grammar is Ashtadhyayi written by Panini, or even Mahabhashya written by Patanjali, or even let's say books which Kalidas wrote, or Ramayana and Mahabharata which were compiled much later. Ramayana, I told you in the last class that Ramayana and Mahabharata के बहुत सारे forms हैं. So Ramayana and Mahabharata which were compiled later in, let's say for example, 5th century AD or 6th century AD, there will be differences in what type of words, what type of rules of grammar is being used. So even in Sanskrit, you will find that there is an evolution. The Sanskrit which we study today, even though again Sanskrit, it can be said that it has it's not been a very popular language. So for example, although there is some effort to again ensure that the language revives, but the Sanskrit which is popular today, it will not be the same Sanskrit which was used in Vedas. And that is true for all languages. It is true for all languages that the language, how it evolved, how it originated, how it evolved, and finally how it is being practiced today, there will be differences, okay? So a lot of times, for example, and one of the another reasons why when people say that Sanskrit is the oldest language or Tamil is the oldest language, this debate does not make any sense. If anyone, let's say for example, this debate is only a political debate, that if somebody is saying that Tamil is older than Sanskrit or Sanskrit is older than Tamil, so you can ask a very simple question. Are you saying that Tamil had survived exactly as the same manner as it was, let's say 3000 years ago or 4000 years ago? Or is it also true for Sanskrit? The answer is no, it is not so. So such type of debates are only for, like, these are only for people who have some sort of political incentive. So it will always be started by political leadership. It is not an academic debate. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of times, ये जो political debate है, it has like this societal impact. People tend to mobilize. People tend to take a lot of pride. They associate a lot of pride, and so basically it turns out to be a good political tool. So this is also not a very good debate. Similarly, This is also not a very good debate, that who are original Indians. We have discussed this also. For example, are Aryans original Indians? Dravidians, ये Aryans Dravidians से division है भी क्या? So the most accepted theory is that ऐसा कुछ division है नहीं. जो पूरा Aryan और Dravidian वाला जो theory है, ये theory Britishers ने शुरू करा था. हो सकता है कि उनके intentions, I am not questioning their intentions, but there is a very good chance that their intentions were to create further division in the society. But nonetheless, let's say for example, even if I do not question the intent, I will question the theory itself because it is not based on very good ideas. So this entire divide of Aryan and Dravidian, North Indian and South Indian is not very good because both North and South Indians owe their ancestry to, let's say for example, people of Harappa. And some sort of ancestry will also be from early Aryans, right? So for example, early graves have been found and we have done genetic analysis and we have been able to come to certain conclusions which will be true for North Indians also, for South Indians also. So this was a division created in the, this was a division which was again used by, there is a very good chance that it was further a way to create division in the society. Anyways, in the last class I told you that a group of tribes who spoke common set of languages came to India about around 1500 BC. This is the most accepted theory. There are two other theories which can be used for Aryans. The first theory is that Aryans originated into India and from India they went to different part of the world, right? And the another theory is that migration definitely happened, but the people of Harappa and Aryans, they are not different group of people, they are same set of people. So migration actually did not start around, let's say 2000 or 1500 BC. It may have started as early as 4000 BC and it continued. And it continued. So Aryans and people of Harappa, they are not frankly very different. And because of that, this entire debate regarding, again, Aryan Dravidian does not make any sense. So that is in any case is true, that this Aryan Dravidian division जो है वो बड़ा ही एक manufactured सा debate है. But out of these three theories, the most accepted theory, and I told you that there are many reasons to believe in this theory. The most important reason, of course, is genetic study. But apart from that, there are many other evidences also that people around 2000 BC, this is the most accepted theory. And I will also tell you here only that if, let's say, for example, tomorrow we find some other evidences, we should be able to come to a conclusion that we are changing our opinion. And that is how opinions should be made. It should not be made on like what we want to believe in. It should be made on what type of data we are accumulating, and based on that data we are forming an opinion. It should not be the other way around, that first I have an opinion and then I will try to pick data based on my already established opinions. Anyways, so in last class I told you that early we can divide Vedic age into two parts, early Vedic age and later Vedic age. I told you that early Vedic age basically coincides with compilation of Rig Veda, and I also told you that even Vedic literature in itself can be divided into four categories. The most first जो होगा Samhita portion होगा, that will be the Vedic hymns, then there will be Aranyaks, then there will be Upanishads, Brahmans, and then of course Upanishads. So जो hymn portion of Rig Veda है, जो Samhita portion of Rig Veda है, that was compiled the earliest, and that is what early Vedic age. बाकी जो rest three portions, Aranyak, Brahman and Upanishad of Rig Veda, as well as all three Vedas, all the parts of three Vedas, they were compiled later, and that actually signifies later Vedic age. And we do find that even though there are many elements of continuity from early Vedic age to later Vedic age, there are many changes also. And this is what we study history. This is the study of history is all about. Like what remained and what changed. So there is a very famous phrase for it, change and continuity. So we do find that there are many similarities in early Vedic age and later Vedic age, but based on the text which is available to us, Vedic text which is available to us, we can come to certain conclusions regarding what type of society, what type of people we are talking about. And we can further use, to understand their economic life, we can use archaeology as a source. So archaeology will again remain a very important source throughout the historical period, without any doubt. But जो major source है हमारा वो Vedic text है. ठीक है. So in last class, for example, we talked about certain features. For example, we talked about some name of tribes which are mentioned in Rig Veda. Maybe these are Aryan, most of them are Aryan tribes. Some of those tribes may also have been non-Aryan tribes. For example, जो एक बहुत famous battle which is mentioned in Rig Veda, Battle of Dasaragya War, 10 kings, Battle of 10 kings. Battle of 10 kings may have 5 Aryan and 5 non-Aryan tribes, and in this battle जो Bharat tribe है that emerged victorious, and in fact जो पूरा भारत वर्ष या भारत जो term है that comes from Bharat. We also discussed that Bharat tribe entered into an alliance with a tribe called Puru, and that alliance together was called Kuru, and Kuru also allied with Panchals, and Kuru tribe and Panchal tribe played a very very important role in the political development of ancient India. They in fact had some sort of, we can say, supremacy over the region of Aryavrat. I will tell you that what Aryavrat is. But supremacy, they are the most important tribe for hundreds of years, that they are the most important tribes. However, later we find out that even these tribes decline, and many different tribes, and by the way, they no longer will be called tribes because they have settled themselves into one particular territory, and they have come up with their own set of rules and regulations, own set of governance mechanism, and they have set up some smaller kingdoms. They do emerge in the late part of later Vedic age, and उसके बाद जो topic है उसको जनपद या महाजनपद एज हम बोलते हैं, right? तो अभी तक हमने बस इतना डिस्कस किया था. तो कोई any question if you have, please go ahead and ask. This was just a like brief recap. हाँ जी. Cows, yeah. So cow was a coveted thing. So I told you one of the, so that's a very good question. Her question is that why most of the wars are fought over cows. So the reason is very simple, because जो main economic activity है वो animal husbandry है. By the way, that does not mean that people do not know agriculture. In fact, people also know some advanced form of agriculture. But even then, animal rearing is the most important economic activity. So more animals basically means more riches for a tribe, right? And because of that, most of the wars, for example, if one tribe is fighting from another tribe, it is for possession of more and more cows. Okay? Any other question from the Hanji?
We can agree that the Aryan people were native of the soil at those times, according to the theory. But we also find some different facial features of people living in south, living in north, as well as east.
Okay. Okay. So his question is, I will again use जो native and non-native है, ये बहुत ही बढ़िया चीज नहीं है. Native and non-native एक particular time period में वो सिर्फ true होगा. If I am using the term native and non-native, that is only true for a particular time period. जैसे अभी के for example हम जो non-Indians हैं, अभी कोई बाहर से आया तो okay we can say that okay they are non-natives, वो Indians नहीं है. At least for let's say for example one generation they have come from outside. But let's say for example if somebody had settled here, just after few years this term of native and non-native will not make a lot of sense. Anyways, your question is that we have native Indians, for example, once Aryans have settled themselves, we have Aryans, and apart from that there are many facial features. So facial features are basically, we are talking about different ethnicities. India is a very, very diverse country. In terms of ethnicity, so for example, the first very good classification of Indians will be in fact linguistic classification. That what type of languages we speak. And turns out that even though we speak thousands of languages, all of those languages can be categorized into 4 major categories, right? So the oldest, for example, one of the oldest languages will be the Austro-Burmese language, right? Indo-Burmese, Austro-Asiatic. Third oldest will be Dravidian languages, which includes Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, also Tulu. And the recent language will be, which has been used into India, that will be Indo-European group of languages that starts with Sanskrit, but it includes all other languages, major languages which are spoken in North India today. For example, Hindi, Punjabi, Bangla, Odia, Marathi, all of these languages are part of a group of language which is called Indo-European group of language, right? So, yahan ye linguistic division. And apart from that, of course, there are lot of people, for example, from Burma region, many from China, from region of Taiwan. And also at the same time, we have to assume here that people of Harappa may have settled into different part of country. So India, because migration has occurred in many phases, and all of those migrations do represent different set of people with different ethnicities, different background, and because of that, some obvious differences which we can find out is the differences in facial features. Right, these are some obvious differences. But even if, let's say, for example, facial features are same, even then there will be differences. So that is simply because India has been a very diverse country, and India has witnessed many phases of migrations from different part of the world at different point of time. Okay.
If a scholar completely ignores the Aryan invasion theory.
Aryan invasion theory has been ignored. By the way, again, Aryan invasion theory, no sane historian or no sane person will accept Aryan invasion theory. There is no proof to that. Anyways, continue your question.
So the differences between attributes, physical attributes, is due to geographical location or due to intermixing?
A lot of things. So both will have a role here. Right, so his question is that differences in the physical features. Differences in physical features arises because, so for example, one group of people enter into a marital relationship with another group of people. That will lead to genetic intermixing. And that genetic, despite that, for example, a lot of times what has happened is that, I told you in the very first class, that this intermixing jo concept hai, that was frowned upon after certain period of time. Jo intercaste marriages, they were not accepted. Right, so that because of that, in a way, it has ensured कि certain set of people, they will look very similar, right? So genetic intermixing has not happened a lot, and frankly, that is quite unfortunate, because genetic intermixing जो है, that does lead to many important traits which are very very useful if you have settled into one particular location. So जो ये caste जो as a issue है, not only it has a political impact and bad political impact, it also had an impact on how Indians have evolved for thousands of years. Had, for example, अगर intercaste marriages हमने allow करे होते, या शुरू से कोई genetic intermixing या people intermixing marriage इन पे कोई restriction नहीं होता, then जो for example Indians, for example us as Indians would have been very different and perhaps much more evolved than compared to what it is because of caste system. So anyways, that is entirely separate debate. ये जो एक पूरा एक question होता है what if वाली चीज़, एक हिस्ट्री में हमेशा एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग एनालिसिस होता है दैट इफ समथिंग वुड नॉट हैव हैपेंड, सो फॉर एग्जांपल जिसको हम काउंटर फैक्चुअल बोलते हैं, दैट वी डू नो दैट दिस हैपेंड, बट अगर ये नहीं हुआ होता, कुछ और हुआ होता, तो हाउ थिंग्स वुड हैव इवॉल्व्ड. तो काउंटर फैक्चुअल एनालिसिस जो हिस्ट्री में एक बड़ा ही इंटरेस्टिंग एनालिसिस हमेशा होगा.
We have to define the people of Harappan civilization. What is the most accepted?
Okay, so that's a good question. We did not had any answer to that. Up till few years ago, that where did people of Harappa come from, ऐसा भी तो है नहीं कि वो भी इंडिया में ही, because we do know that all people of all countries came from Africa. We do know that. And by the way, this is again, ये इसका proper proof है that all human beings which exist today, all 7 billion of us, we exist today, that all of us, our ancestry goes back to Africa. That all of us came from Africa. So even people of Harappa did originate into West Asian region. So for example, we have this answer that where did people of Harappa came from? So they came from West Asia region. And we have, like, for example, able to pinpoint certain geographical reasons. For example, in the very first class, somebody asked about जो population genetics पे question है. Early Indians अगर आप book पढ़ोगे तो they actually, that book tells you this answer, that in West Asia particular location can be pinpointed that people of Harappa originally belong to this region, and then they started migrating. But that region is different from where Aryans originated. So that is how we know that Harappans and Aryans, they are not exactly same set of tribes. They are different set of tribes. Any other question? Hanji. Okay, so we frankly do not know that if they attended or not attended Samiti. We just know, for example, it is mentioned that women could attend Sabha and Vidhata. And by the way, if you look at the description of this, it clearly tells you that Sabha and Vidhata are the most important assemblies. Like Sabha is this assembly of elites, and Vidhata is assembly of tribe, the entire assembly of tribe, the entire tribe is sitting together. So it clearly tells you that, again, I do not know that if Samiti में woman participation था कि नहीं, but we do know that Sabha and Vidhata में definitely था. And that is frankly more than enough, because it tells you that women had higher status in the society. Women had status perhaps as equal to men in the society. Hanji, you had a question.
Said that every human species derive their origination from Africa. So my question is regarding that, what about digital computing model? This says that every species developed in different areas.
Every species?
Developed in different
So again, how do you define species? For example, if you are talking about, I'm talking about only Homo sapiens. This is also very, very important. When I say that all of us owe their ancestry to migration out of Africa, then I'm only talking about Homo sapiens. I'm not talking about Neanderthals, or I'm not talking about Denisovans. By the way, these are different species belonging to Homo, जो पूरा genus है, right? So Homo के इकलौते जो species which have survived, that is Homo sapiens. Other species like Neanderthals or Denisovans, they have not survived, right? So they of course definitely originated in different locations. For example, Neanderthals may have originated in Europe, Denisovans may have originated even in, let's say, for example, higher latitudes. But I am only talking about Homo sapiens. Hanji.
Can we say that Dravidians were the Harappan peoples who migrated from northwest?
Sorry?
Can we say that Dravidians were Harappan people?
Okay, so his question is that can we say that people of Dravidians are people of Harappa? This is also a very famous theory, but it does not have lot of like reasoning behind it. The only relationship perhaps which Dravidians, people of South India and Harappa has similarity in language, and ये भी एक theory है, because we have not been able to decipher the language, but many scholars believe that language of Harappa did remain, at least some part of that language did remain, and it led to emergence of Dravidian languages. Apart from that, any type of other similarity, that will not make a lot of sense, because frankly we do not have many reasons to come to any conclusion. All the conclusions will be based on opinions of historians, right? And those opinions cannot be used as a fact.
What about Australia and America? How they travel through oceans?
That's अब ये जो है क्वेश्चन है बहुत ही हमारे बिल्कुल स्कोप के बहुत बाहर है, बट हर क्वेश्चन इज दैट हाउ पीपल वेंट टू ऑस्ट्रेलिया और America. So for example, America, especially for example, as a continent, if you're talking about how migration happened, that in itself is a very interesting question. For example, especially जो indigenous Americans हैं, we are often called American Indians, because when Columbus reached America, he thought that he has reached India, and he called them Indians. So he was actually exploring for India. So जो American Indians हैं, उनका जो migration है वो खुद में बहुत interesting है, like how that migration happened. But we definitely do know that about 10th century Vikings, which belong to Nordic region, Sweden, Denmark का जो पूरा region है, they had reached to America, and of course Columbus का जो पूरा expedition है. Same goes with Australia also. जैसे for example in Australia and New Zealand you have this group of people called Maori people. Now how Maori originated into this continent, that in itself has a very interesting analysis. So that will be like completely out of syllabus. I will not go into details of that. Hanji. Harappa. Okay, so his question is that जो ornaments हमको मिलते हैं, why are we assigning gender to the ornament? That maybe these ornaments are being worn by men. I don't know to answer to that question, and I really do not know answer to that question. So, frankly, I do not know answer to that question. Okay, for example, why are we coming to a conclusion that only women wore those necklaces or all the ornaments? Definitely, without any doubt, men definitely must have wore some type of ornaments. इसमें कोई doubt नहीं है. But if your question is that exactly same set of ornaments, तो इसका एक answer I can tell you that in archaeology there is a sub-discipline where people try to compare the ancient culture with modern culture. So we try to find elements of continuity. We try to think that जो इस तरीके से अभी जो practices हैं, बहुत ज़्यादा difference past में भी नहीं रहा होगा. Again, it does not have any scientific basis. This logic does not have any scientific basis, but there is a logical basis to it. And that is how you can come to this conclusion. Apart from that, I don't think so we have any other reasons to Like for example, say that why different set of ornaments. It was mainly, so for example, अभी तक कोई भी, her question is that जो बलि है, बलि is it a, बलि जो है, is it जो voluntary tax की हम बात कर रहे हैं, what type of tax it is? So believe me, जो money है, जो coinage system है, that was not developed. So बलि was in kind here. So tax जो होता है दो टाइप के हो सकते हैं, एक होता है कैश. फॉर एग्जाम्पल राइट नो अभी जो हम टैक्स पे करते हैं, एक जो टाइप ऑफ टैक्स होता है दैट इज कॉल्ड काइंड. सो काइंड विल बी अ पार्ट ऑफ योर प्रोड्यूस. फॉर एग्जाम्पल वॉट एवर यू आर प्रोड्यूसिंग, दैट कैन बी डेयरी प्रोडक्ट्स, दैट कैन बी फ्रूट्स, वेजिटेबल्स, ग्रेन, अ पार्ट ऑफ दैट विल गो एज टैक्स, राइट. सो अभी जो टैक्सेशन सिस्टम है दैट इज ओनली इन काइंड, इट इज नॉट इन कैश. एंड द रीजन इज वेरी सिंपल, बिकॉज क्वाइनेज एज अ सिस्टम हैज नॉट डेवलप्ड. क्वाइनेज एज अ सिस्टम डेवलप्ड in Mahajanpat period. So in both early and later Vedic age, जो आपका economic transaction है, that is barter system, right? So can I like continue now? Like any other doubts? हाँ जी.
Most of the historians believe that the structure of Great Bath was used for religious purposes. So what are the evidence for that?
Again, that is just opinion. His question is जो Great Bath है, it had some religious purpose. That is only opinion of historians, nothing else. Has it some religious significance? It is only based on opinion. We have no way of confirming that. Many historians believe that, but we have no way of confirming that. मतलब इसका कुछ ऐसे such evidence नहीं है. Because it is a very great structure, and structure like that is not found in any other location, so it seems that many people are using that infrastructure. Lot of times, when lot of people are using same infrastructure, often those things have some religious significance compared. For example, in today's world also, we have temples, right? We have mosques, things like that. So based on that, it has been concluded. But apart from that, we do not have any other theory. Anyways, if you have any other question, let's discuss those questions after the break. In last class, I think कहाँ तक हमने discuss किया था? We are talking about polity. Anyways, so three major headings. For example, this is in fact, I am going to use this structure. What structure I have adopted in case of Vedic period? A very similar type of structure I am going to adopt in later themes also. For example, I am going to talk about what type of, स्पेशली जहां पे किंगडम्स होंगे वहां पे एक चीज और डिटेल में, जो सबसे ज्यादा डिटेल में जो डिस्कस करेंगे हम, वो होगा एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. दैट व्हाट टाइप ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट. बट वेर एवर इट इज पॉसिबल एंड वेर एवर वी फील दैट सम इंपॉर्टेंट सोसाइटल और इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट अकर्ड, then we will definitely include that. So political development will be one of the aspect of historical analysis, that what type of political setup we are talking about. But apart from that, how society is evolving, how economy is evolving, ये भी हम करीब हर थीम में जो भी एटलीस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थीम्स हैं वहां पे तो हम डिस्कस करेंगे ही करेंगे. और जो किंगडम्स होंगे वहां पे एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन विल बी अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक दैट वी आर गोइंग टू लॉट ऑफ डिटेल्ड अबाउट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. ओके, एनीवेज, so three things I'm going to discuss from early Vedic age, and later Vedic age I will not take a lot of time because I'm only going to focus upon how things changed. So the first thing I'm going to discuss here will be what type of society you are talking about. The second thing I'm going to talk about is that what type of religion we are talking about, and what type of social relationship we are talking about. So let's start with, for example, what type of society. And जब हम society discuss करते हैं, there are few things which are very important for us. The first thing is hierarchy. That is there a social hierarchy, and if there is a hierarchy in society, for hierarchy basically means that some groups are at top, some groups are at bottom, there are some groups in the middle. So if there is a social hierarchy, what is the basis of that social hierarchy? So we do know that Varna system emerged in early Vedic age itself. However, it should be very, very clear that I told you in the last class also that Varna as a classification emerged in the later part of early Vedic age. ऋग वेदा का जो 10th मंडला है, 10th book जो है, that 10th book was compiled the last. That 10th book in fact may have included. So in last class I also told you that how old is Rig Veda. We frankly have no way of knowing that, because we do know that जो Vedic hymns हैं, they were passed orally from one generation to another generation. There is a oral tradition. Written record जो है, ये तो हमको बहुत नया मिलता है, बट जो ओरल ट्रेडिशन है वो कितना पुराना है, वी हैव नो वे ऑफ कंफर्मिंग दैट. इट कैन बी एज ओल्ड एज 3000 BC, and many of the hymns of Rig Veda may have been actually passed from thousands of years even before it was compiled. But many of the hymns of Rig Veda, especially the first and 10th book hai, they may have included after coming to India, after interaction with early settlers, and those things may have become integral part of Rig Vedic literature. Okay, so the 10th mandal hai, 10th mandal mein there is a section called Purush Shukta. Purush Shukta basically talks about a concept called Purush. A Purush is not exactly same as what we use in current terms. Purush is frankly a very philosophical term. Explaining Purush in itself can take hours, that how Purush has been described in Rig Veda. But for simplicity, just assume that Purush is basically a cosmic being. A cosmic being which was sacrificed by gods, and that led to creation of universe. And with this creation, the fourfold division of society also came into existence. So for example, Brahma represents the entire creation of human beings, and different organs of Brahma represent different social classification. The mind represents Brahman, the hands represent Kshatriya, the waist represents Vaishya, and the feet represent Shudra. So there are two significance of that. First, all fourfold classification are integral to the society. Without feet or without hand or without waist or without mind, I cannot assume a human body. So it tells you that this is an integral part of society, right? But at the same time, the positioning hai, that tells you the relationship among different varnas. So for example, mind, that Brahmins have access to knowledge. Kshatriyas have hand, basically they are protectors. And जो वैश्यास हैं basically they are in fact they play a very important role, that जो भी activities हैं, economic activities हैं, most of the economic activities are done by वैश्यास, and शूद्रास are at the service of other three varna. अब ये जो पूरा classification है, what is the basis of that? So for example, the term varn in itself means color. Okay, varn का मतलब होता है color. So a lot of historians believed that maybe people who Aryans, when they entered into conflict with early settlers, and maybe early settlers who were defeated and they became dasas, they became shudras, and often they were not of fairer color, and because of that this color consciousness appears, and this classification is called varna system. That was a theory, but if many historians believe, including R.S. Sharma and even Upinder Singh believes, that ये जो पूरा का पूरा focus on varn based on color जो है, ये बहुत exaggerate किया है historians ने, इसका बहुत ज़्यादा basis नहीं है. तो color consciousness definitely है, that there is some sort of color consciousness that Aryans may be fairer compared to early settlers, but color did not become a division of social classification. That classification may have occurred, that one tribe emerged victorious against another tribe, and many people of that tribe were integrated as fourth varna, right? So Rajan jo hai, for example, Rajan may have become part of Kshatriya class, jo ruling class hai. Rajan was supported by priest, so priest may have become Brahmins, they have access to knowledge. Jo normal people hai, who are doing the economic activity, who are paying bali to Rajan, they may have become Vaishyas, and people who were defeated in wars and they were captured and they were used for this service, they may have become Shudras. So जो पूरा color का जो पूरा classification है, that may have been exaggeration. Okay, so this is just one thing which should you know, write down, give this heading: social hierarchy. Social hierarchy. So social hierarchy may write down few things here. Write down few things here. There is a common question by few students, that was king elected or hereditary in early Vedic age? Okay, So most accepted theory is that position of king, position of Rajan was hereditary. However, his power was not absolute. So the most accepted theory is it was hereditary. Maybe let's say for example, if a king is not of worthy, maybe some another king may have been elected by the assembly because assemblies were very powerful. But जो सबसे accepted theory है that in most of the cases it was hereditary. Kings were not elected per se. So even let's say for example if they are being elected, they belong to जो राजन की family है, जो king का family है, वहीं से elected भी होंगे, right? So this is the most accepted theory. Write down here. In Rig Veda, the 10th mandala as part of Purush Shukta, as part of Purush Shukta, talks about four social categories, Brahman, Rajanya. So Rajanya is what Kshatriya is. Vaishya, Shudra. However, the term Varna is not mentioned. The term Varna is not mentioned. The term Varna is not mentioned. Write down next point. Varna means color. Varna means color. Varna means color. However, the importance of color as social difference, however, the importance of color as social difference has been exaggerated by many historians. Has been exaggerated by many historians. The importance of color as social difference has been exaggerated by many historians. What it simply means is कि जो पूरा social classification, it is not based on color per se. Color, there is some element of color consciousness that Aryans may are fairers, early settlers are not that fair. So there is some sort of color consciousness, but color is not the reason how society was divided, right? Write down next bullet point. Dasas and Dasyus may have been conquered people, people who have been defeated. Conquered people mean people who have been defeated. May have been conquered people who became Shudras. This is a continuation of early Vedic age. Dasas and Dasyus may have been conquered people who became Shudras. The key word here is may have been. Again, this is a theory. And this theory is based on, again, logical conclusions. But we have no way of knowing exactly which group of people became Shudras and Brahmins. So, but this seems like a very logical things to conclude, that maybe जो conquered people and people who were defeated, tribes who were defeated, those tribes were integrated as part of Aryan fold, or maybe they were early Aryan tribes, we do not know, but they become Shudras. Give the next heading, religion. religion. अब देखो रिलीजन भी बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है जो अर्ली वैदिक एज का है. जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट गॉड है वो इंद्र है. So Indra is god of lot of things. For example, first of all, he is god of rain, right? But at the same time, he is also god of war. For example, when tribes are going for a war with another tribe, they call for Purandar, and Purandar is what Indra is. That they ask strength from Purandar that they emerge victorious in this war. So Indra is the most important god. However, at the same time, whenever a Vedic hymn starts invoking a particular god, that god has been given the highest status. For example, if a hymn is about Agni, then Agni has been given the highest status. If it has been about Indra, Indra has been given the highest status. Or even if there is a goddess, let's say Usha. Usha represents basically early morning, जो बिल्कुल पहला जो morning होता है, that is called Usha. So even Usha जो है, when she is invoked, she is the most important goddess. But why I am saying that Indra is the most important god? Because Indra has been mentioned the most number of times in Rig Veda, followed by Agni, followed by Marut and other gods. So what it does tell you, that different forces of nature, basically these are nature worshippers, Aryans are nature worshippers, and different forces of nature are perceived as some sort of deity, and those deities are personified in the form of all these gods like Indra, Agni, Marut. These are basically different forces of nature. Indra represents rainfall, Marut represents wind, Agni represents fire, and all of these are different forces of nature. Similarly, Usha represents early light in the morning. The first light of the morning is what Usha is. Saraswati is a very important goddess. She is a river, and Aryans settled. Saraswati is a very, very important river for them, right? So even Saraswati is a very important goddess. So early Aryans, they are nature worshippers, and different forces of nature are perceived as different deities. Write down. Early Aryans were nature worshippers. Early Aryans were nature worshippers. Nature worshippers. Different forces of nature, were worshipped in the form of a deity. Different forces of the nature were worshipped in the form of a deity. Indra was the most important god. Indra was the most important god. Indra was the most important god, who was also called Purandar. Who was also called Purandar. He was god of rain. He was god of rain. He was god of rain. अब जैसे for example, a very interesting thing here I can tell you, that we also know that many Aryans migrated to Europe, and in the time, as time evolved, they also developed their own set of religion. So for example, जो सबसे first civilization जब हम यूरोप का डिस्कस करते हैं, that is Greek civilization, and Greek worshipped Greek gods, and जो सबसे important Greek god है, that is Zeus, and Zeus का जो weapon है, that is thunderbolt, which is very similar to Vajra of Indra, and Zeus also is responsible for rainfall, right? And by the way, Zeus is also a person who is of a very, very loose character, very similar to Indra, right? So, so ये we find like more than similarities जो आप imagine कर सकते हो. So it does tell you that even though, and this is again a type of proof that maybe people had similar set of beliefs, and as they migrated in the course of time, many similar, and we do find similarities but with different names, how language evolved, but many religious beliefs remained the same. So Indra is the most important god. Write down. Agni, Varun, Som, Marut. Agni, Varun, Som, Marut are other important gods. Are other important gods. Are other important gods. जैसे अग्नि रिप्रेजेंट्स फायर, वरुण रिप्रेजेंट्स वाटर, सोम प्लांट जो हमने डिस्कस किया था, राइट. मारुत रिप्रेजेंट्स विंड. सो डिफरेंट फोर्सेस ऑफ नेचर. But Som, even though starts with a plant, but Som later is personified with, let's say, for example, a lot of times there are many variations in the worship of Som. Later times, Som represents moon also. Like Som becomes Chandrama, the moon god. Anyways, in next bullet point, write down. Many goddesses are also worshipped, such as Usha, Saraswati, Usha, Saraswati. People prayed in chorus. People prayed in chorus with recitation of prayers. With recitation of prayers. Recitation of prayers, performance of sacrifices, and asked for praja, pashu, and asked for praja basically means children here. Asked for praja, pashu, cattle, food, wealth. हाँ जी, हाँ. तो सैक्रिफाइस का मतलब यहाँ पे सैक्रिफाइस एज सच कोई एनिमल सैक्रिफाइस नहीं है. सैक्रिफाइस का मतलब यहाँ पे, एंड बाय द वे, टू थिंग्स. इन एनी केस आई वाज गोइंग टू टेल यू, सैक्रिफाइस इज एन इंटीग्रल पार्ट ऑफ द वर्शिप, बट सैक्रिफाइस इज नॉट द प्राइमरी थिंग. द प्राइमरी थिंग इज चैंटिंग प्रेयर्स. इन लेटर वैदिक एज सैक्रिफाइस बिकम्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. इन अर्ली वैदिक एज सैक्रिफाइस इज, लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल, सैक्रिफाइस ऑफ डेयरी प्रोडक्ट, जैसे अभी भी हम यज्ञ में जो स्वाहा करते हैं. So sacrifice of those things. But in later Vedic age we do find that sacrifice has a proper animal sacrifice जो है वो भी merge होता है in later Vedic age, right? And एक last heading दे देना यहाँ पे. हाँ जी. Sorry? Prayed for. They prayed for that we want more praja, more pashu, more food, more wealth. Asked for basically praise. And last heading, just give this. So for example, this is a very, I am not sure like what type of, जैसे इसको मैं as such social setup भी मैं heading दे सकता हूँ, but a better heading will be that what type of relationship among people we are talking about. That how people, जैसे for example, we often associate our identity with certain thing. For example, when you are born, your immediate identity is with your parents. राइट, आपका जो फैमिली का जो आइडेंटिटी है कि आप कौन से फैमिली में पैदा हुए हैं. देन ऑफ कोर्स एज वी ग्रो अप वी हैव डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ आइडेंटिटी. फॉर एग्जांपल, यू हैव caste identity, you have religion identity, you have a regional identity that I belong to this particular state, and of course you have a national identity that I am Indian, right? So all of us can be identified with different type of identities. So similarly in early Vedic age, what type of social setup we are talking about, what is, and by the way these identities are very very important because identities are integral to social formation, right? कोई भी society form नहीं हो सकती है if people are not identifying themselves with one particular unifying factor. सब लोग इंडिविजुअल होंगे, सबका अपना इंडिविजुअल. सो सोसाइटी का एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट क्या होता है कि अगर सब लोग फ्री हो जाएं, and everybody does as they want, then there will be chaos in the society, right? So we need to have certain set of rules and regulations that I am going to, let's say for example, forego some of my right, I am going to dilute some of my right in the hope that in a social setup there will be less chaos, my life will be much more ordered. हर सोसाइटी का बेसिस यही होगा. तो ये जो, और इसके लिए that to form a society, identities are very very important. So what type of tribal setup, even though by the way this is a tribal society, what type of tribal setup we are talking about? Where does my loyalty lie? How do I identify myself? Right? तो ये क्वेश्चन है जिसका फ्रैंकली हमारे पास बहुत बढ़िया आंसर्स नहीं है, बट फिर भी based on whatever information historians have accumulated and other scholars have accumulated from Vedas, the most important identification mark here is tribe, that a particular tribe you belong to. It is not because of a region. For example, our most important identity is that identity as Indian, that we belong to a nation called India. तो यहाँ पे रीजनल आइडेंटिटी इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, यहाँ पे जो भी किनशिप एग्जिस्ट करता है सोसाइटी में, किनशिप इज बेसिकली दिस सोशल रिलेशनशिप, दैट किनशिप का जो बेसिस है वो आपका ट्राइब क्या है. But even a tribe is further divided into many smaller categories. For example, you find things like Jana, Vish, Gram. So Jana is one tribe. Vish का exact meaning clear नहीं है, but maybe few tribes living in one place belong to one Vish. When lot of Vish from one category, they belong to perhaps one Gram, one village. So Gram is also not initially village, but later of course the term Gram comes out to be village. So give this heading tribe and family. Tribe and family. Write down in bullet points. Rig Veda talks about many units of division in the society. Yeah, many units of division, not in the society. Just write down many units of division, such as Jana, Vish, Gan, Gram, Kul. Jana, Vish, ग्राम, कुल. देखो बहुत सारे टेक्स्ट बुक में बहुत गण, जना, विस, गण, GANA, ग्राम, GRAMA, and kul. So I will tell you here only in certain textbook you will try to find ki they have tried to identify the meaning of, and they have tried to create some sort of hierarchy here. But lot of times meaning of all of those things are not clear. इनके ये जो words हैं by the way बाद में भी use होंगे. जैसे ग्रामा इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट वर्ड, जन इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट वर्ड, कुल इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट वर्ड. ये सारे वर्ड्स का मीनिंग बाद के टेक्स्ट में बहुत क्लियर है कि क्या है. बट बेस्ड ऑन दैट सम टेक्स्ट बुक हैव ट्राइड टू क्रिएट अ हायरार्की कि इसमें जो डिवीजन है यहाँ पे टॉप पे क्या होगा फिर नीचे क्या होगा. बट based on, if let's for example if I'm using only Rig Veda as a source, then the difference between these terms is not often very clear. But there are few meanings which are clear. For example, Jan basically means one particular tribe. So write down the primary loyalty of people belonged to Jan. Primary loyalty belonged to Jan. Basically what tribe I am talking about, to Jan, and not to a territory, and not to a territory, not to a territory. जैसे अभी हमारे लिए टेरिटोरियल आइडेंटिटी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, विच स्टेट विच कंट्री वी बिलोंग टू, राइट. सो टेरिटोरियल आइडेंटिटी हमारे लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. हियर द आइडेंटिटी इज एसोसिएटेड विथ वन ट्राइब, नॉट विथ जन. And by the way, Gramas, when Gramas fought among each other, that called Sangram. So Sangram is a word for war, right? There is another word for war which is called Sangram. So Sangram basically means that many Gramas are fighting with each other. So exact meaning of Jan, Vis, Gan, Grama, Kul is not very clear, but wherever it is clear, just write down next bullet point. Clash of Gramas was called Sangram. Clash of Grammars was called Sangram. Family was called Griha. Family was called Griha. And the head of family was called Grihapati. Head of family was called Grihapati. Head of family was called Grihapati. In society, practice of widow marriage, practice of widow remarriage was prevalent. Practice of widow remarriage was prevalent. Widow remarriage was prevalent. Child marriage is not found in early Vedic age. Child marriage is not found in early Vedic age. Early Vedic age. Give the next heading. Later Vedic phases. A later Vedic age. Later Vedic age. हाँ जी. That's a very good question. So her question is that when Gramas are fighting with each other, does it represent one particular tribe? So no. It can be, one Grama can mean lot of tribes together. And when we are talking about Sangram, that is which is clash of Gramas, then one group of tribes, many tribes are fighting another group of tribes, many tribes. Hence the term Sangram. Right, so Sangram is a much larger war which occurred, right? So I told you in the last class also that जैसे for example in many texts, जैसे अगर आप न्यू एनसीईआरटी पढ़ोगे तो वहाँ पे दासा दासियों को interchangeably यूज कर रखा है. That dasa and dasyus are exactly same. If you read R.A. Sharma tells you that the term dasa जो है, that may have been early settlers in India. Dasyu may have been early Aryan tribe, because Dasyu as a term is also given in like Persian text. But if you read Upinder Singh, which is a much more recent textbook and it has used recent developments, as per Upinder Singh textbook, both Dasa and Dasyu are mentioned in many other texts, not Indian text, but many other Persian texts also. So it does tell you that Dasas and Dasyus both may have been early Aryan tribe. They are not exactly, वैसे नहीं है कि ये non-Aryan tribe है. They may have been belong to early set of migration, and when later Aryan, so again, this migration did not occur in one phase. It went on for many, many years. Like, in fact, hundreds of years. And बाद के जो tribes हैं, they may have defeated Dasa and Dasyus. So, there is not, frankly, lot of clarity regarding Dasas and Dasyus. The most accepted theory as of now is that they may have been early tribes who had settled into land of Sapt Sindhu, जिसको हम बोलते हैं, जो पूरा सप्त सिंधु एरिया है. हाँ जी. बिकॉज जो मंत्र हैं वो इन्वोक जब करेंगे तो वहाँ पे गॉडेसेस को बोलेंगे कि उषा के बारे में तारीफ करेंगे, बोलेंगे उषा से कुछ चीज़ें डिमांड करेंगे, दैट वी आर होपिंग दिस थिंग्स फ्रॉम यू. You do not demand things from normal human beings, right? For example, when you are asking for blessings, you ask for blessings from, and it is not just one place. जो उषा का invoking है वो बहुत जगह पे आपको मिलेगा, and it is very similar to invoking of other gods. So that is how we know that they worshipped goddesses also. There are many ways that you can actually find out that we are talking about. So for example, जैसे नॉर्मल जब हम इंग्लिश यूज करते हैं तो ही और शी होता है, राइट? वैसे ही अगर आप फॉर एग्जांपल संस्कृत में भी आप जाओगे तो आराम से मेंशन हो जाएगा कि इफ वी आर प्रेइंग अ गॉड और इफ वी आर प्रेइंग अ गॉडेस. ओके, हाँ जी, हाँ, अदिति इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट गॉड. हाँ ठीक है, आप लिख सकते हो. अगर आप उषा सरस्वती लिखा है, इफ यू राइट डाउन यू कैन मेंशन अनदर नेम अदिति. अदिति इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फीमेल गॉडेस. Anyways, this was the map I showed you in the last class of early Vedic period that Aryans have settled mainly into land of Saptashindhu. Land of Saptashindhu basically means Indus, its 5 tributaries and Saraswati. All of them together is land of Saptashindhu. So by 1100 BC they had entered into the region of Ganga, right? But if you look at the next map, which is map of late Vedic period, from 1100 to 600 or 500 BC, I have mentioned 600 BC, that is a more acceptable classification, that now Aryans have occupied entire Ganga Yamuna Doab region, okay? And this entire, and by the way, we need to appreciate that this development which we are talking about is of development of 600 years, 500 years, 600 years, not of like few decades or few years. तो ये development को जब हम पढ़ते हैं, lot of things I am going to generalize, बट वी हैव टू एक्सेप्ट दैट ये चेंजेस जो है ऐसे ही नहीं आए होंगे, ये चेंजेस बहुत सारे कॉम्प्लेक्स सोशल इंटरैक्शंस के थ्रू आए होंगे. तो वी ट्राई टू जनरल, व्हेन वी स्टडी such a large period in one go, we try to generalize lot of things, because going into specifics, that is nearly impossible. That how exactly something came out to be, pinpointing exact reasons will be very, very difficult. So anyways, this land which was occupied by Aryas now, this land is called Aryavrat. So this basically is map of Aryavrat in a way, in later Vedic age, and lot of changes occurred from early Vedic age. Anyways, before I talk, कितने लोग बिहार से यहाँ पे? Few people. Okay, few people of you are from Bihar. I am also from Bihar. How many of you are from Uttar Pradesh? A lot of people, you are also from Uttar Pradesh. So I do feel like that the best thing with Uttar Pradesh is that Bihar exists. Like you can always feel good about yourself that you are from Uttar Pradesh, right? Not from Bihar. So, anyways, jokes aside, the reason I'm mentioning this is that people of Aryavrat saw people of Magad. By the way, this reason is Magad. And jo Magadhas jo hai, people of Aryavrat saw people of Magadhas with contempt, that they do not stand socially with us. But as it turns out that in the course of time, the people of Magadhas, these are called Magadhas, Magadhas also became part of this larger Aryan fold. Despite that, they are not given the due recognition in the setup, social setup. Now, for example, I'm going to talk about that why Magad emerged as the most important Mahajanpad. And Magad occupied entire India, in fact, at one point of time. So why does it happen? Now, one of the reason Arya Sharma mentions is, if you read Arya Sharma, one of the reason he mentions is that Magadhas have to prove more to rest of the Aryans that they are either equal or perhaps superior to them. So they are more enthused for warfare, that despite being Aryanized in later time, they are equal or even superior to you. So that, and because of that, they were more enthused into entering into many wars, and finally they were able to defeat many other tribes, right? So again, this is one of the theories. There are many other reasons that why Magad emerged as the most powerful Mahajanpad, but one of this reason is this. So when I'm using the term Aryavrat, for example, right now Aryavrat basically means entire India. That one of the ancient name of India is Aryavrat. But actually it meant in later Vedic text, all the region where Aryans have settled themselves. So that does include entire Punjab, Sindh region, entire Ganga, Yamuna, Doab region of Bihar and Bengal. So most of the North India, West India, East India, that mainly meant the region of Aryavrat. So anyways, I told you in the later Vedic age, lot of things change. So for example, we find out, and let's try to divide this into again same type of division which we have talked about. For example, we find out that in society, the status of women, for example, let's start with that. The position of women definitely declines. That women have less access to education. Women are not allowed to participate in many tribal assemblies. जैसे अभी जो हमने discuss किया था, कि they are not being participated into assemblies. There are more restrictions on women compared to early Vedic age. Similarly, जो Varna system in the early Vedic age, Varna system was not very rigid per se. There's a, for example, there is a very famous hymn in Rig Veda where a person is describing himself and his entire family with different Varnas. He says that his father is a Brahman, his mother belongs to Vaishya, right? He himself, his task, I do not remember the exact, like all the terms, but he himself is a Shudra. Or so he basically, what it means is, that mantra basically what it means is, that even though there is a social classification, it is not very rigid. There is a social mobility. Social mobility basically means that a person belonging to lower social class can become part of upper social class using his occupation, using his talent, whatever. So there is a social mobility. But in later Vedic age, we find out that ये जो पूरा classification है Varna system का, that becomes very rigid, and social mobility now is very, very difficult. That a Shudra or a Vaishya cannot become upper Varnas, right? There are many other interesting development occur that I will also discuss. That in later Vedic age, एक बड़ा interesting development जो होता है, that Brahmins and Kshatriyas themselves are fighting with each other. Because in certain texts, Brahmins are considered to be the superior to Kshatriyas. In another text, Kshatriyas are at the top of this social hierarchy. So even there is a conflict among Brahmins and Kshatriyas. And one of the reason can be because both of them considered superior to each other. But another reason is that because Kshatriyas also have access to education, lot of Kshatriyas did not like the prevalent Brahmanical practices. So one of the important development in later Vedic age occurs is that अभी जैसे हमने discuss किया था कि these are nature worshippers, chorus pray करना ज़्यादा important mode of praying है, but in later Vedic age religion also changes. For example, Indra and Agni no longer are the most important god. जो सबसे important god है वो प्रजापति है. Even Vishnu emerges as a very important god. And Vishnu, by the way, is a minor god in Rig Veda. There are very few hymns associated with Lord Vishnu. But in later Vedic age, Vishnu emerges as a very, very important god. In fact, जो पूरा Vaishnavism का जो development है, that in itself is very interesting. So lot of names of Vishnu, for example, Narayana or Krishna or Vasudev, we find out that lot of entire development of Vaishnavism occurs throughout the historical period. That many gods were integrated as part of Vaishnavism as a larger idea, and it became a very important part of movement, a religious movement, जो कि गुप्ता पीरियड तक जाएगा. हम डिस्कस करेंगे वैष्णविज्म को दोबारा से गुप्ता पीरियड में, राइट? सो बट इन लेटर वैदिक एज विष्णु, Prajapati or Rudra, they emerge as the most important god compared to Indra and Agni. Another important change which occurs is that sacrifices are now more important. And sacrifices, rather than chanting prayers, sacrifices of, let's say for example, as I told you in the last class, earlier in early Vedic age, that sacrifices not only of, let's say, dairy products, but also of animals. That animal sacrifices now are very, very prevalent in the society. So, one of the reasons that why there is a conflict among Brahmins and Kshatriyas is that many Kshatriyas did not like how religion is evolving. And many Kshatriyas, in fact, in a way, they actually rebelled against it. And the very, very good example will be Buddhism and Jainism, because both Mahatma Buddha and Mahavir, they were Kshatriyas. They belonged to Kshatriya clan. And they did not accept the Brahminical supremacy in the society, and they did not accept the fact that Veda is the most important text. जो Vedic supremacy का जो पूरा concept है. So there is a backlash within Aryan fold itself, and that backlash is what Upanishads are all about. So जो later Vedic age में जो development होता है, that sacrifices are very, very important. So because of that, many Upanishads in fact are compiled not by Brahmins but by Kshatriyas, that they consider कि जो भी Vedic sacrifices हैं, they have a philosophical meaning rather than a physical meaning. कि sacrifices are not important, जो sacrifices के बीच का पीछे का logic है और जो philosophical discussion है वो ज़्यादा important है. And इसीलिए जो Upanishads हैं, lot of these Upanishads were compiled, some were compiled by Brahmins, but many of them were also compiled by Kshatriyas. So even at the top of social classification, there is a conflict. However, this conflict occurs around 600, 700, 600 BC. It is not in around 1100 or 1000 BC. So, but lot of changes occur in polity, for example. Samitis are still there, sabhas are still there, but अभी क्या था, सभा समिति में सब लोग participate करते थे. Now only elites of the society could participate. जो power of Rajan है, which was limited by the decisions of Sabha and Samiti, that no longer is there. जो Rajan and priestly class है, they became very very powerful, and their decisions are very very important. They do not have to take consideration of what other members of the tribe are saying. जो बलि है, which was voluntary, that बलि became मैंडेटरी नाउ. सो जो टैक्स है वो मैंडेटरी है. फ्यू थिंग्स, अभी भी स्टैंडिंग आर्मी नहीं है, नो वन इज मेंटेनिंग स्टैंडिंग आर्मी, राइट. बट एट द सेम टाइम जो वॉर लूट होगा, सो फॉर एग्जांपल इफ वन ट्राइब इज फाइटिंग विद अनदर ट्राइब, जो वॉर लूट है, दैट वॉर लूट विल बी डिवाइडेड only among the elites of the society, only among the ruling group of the society, which is very very different from early Vedic age, where it was divided among the entire tribe, right. नेक्स्ट थिंग, जो लैंड एज अ कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी है और जो रीजनल आइडेंटिटी का कॉन्सेप्ट है, दैट दिस लैंड बिलोंग्स टू अ ट्राइब, दैट ऑल्सो इमर्जेस हियर. अर्ली वैदिक एज में क्या है, ट्राइब्स आर ड्वेलिंग यूनिट, दे आर ड्वेलिंग फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर प्लेस. नाउ पीपल इस्टैब्लिशेस, जो वन ग्रुप ऑफ ट्राइब इस्टैब्लिशेस देयर किंगडम एट वन पर्टिकुलर लोकेशन. सो द टर्म जो जन है, विच बेसिकली मेंट अ ट्राइब, नाउ दिस टर्म जन इमर्जेस इनटू अ टर्म जनपद. Now Janpad is not mentioned a single time in Rig Veda, but the term Janpad emerges in later Vedic text and Puranas and even in Buddhist text, which basically signified smaller kingdoms, that one tribe which became powerful. And in the course of time, these Janpads became Mahajanpads. That is our next theme. From 600 BC to 300 BC, we are going to talk about emergence of Mahajanpads into ancient India. But before that, just write down few things about later Vedic age. Give this heading, later Vedic age, from 1100 to 600 BC. Swapnil has a question. I think I have answered this question. Swapnil had a question that was Varna categorization hereditary? And since Dasas were conquered people, did they have a perpetual lower status in society, and opposed to theory that Varna was based on profession? So initially Varna is definitely based on profession. Initially it is not hereditary. For example, एक जो हम identity बोलते हैं कि हमारा जो identity है, it is not ascribed by our birth. That the moment you have taken birth in higher Varna and you are now a Brahman or Kshatriya, that is definitely not true in the case of early Vedic age. But this identification based on your birth, that becomes very very important in later Vedic age. That your identity is basically ascribed the moment you have taken birth in one particular family. तो ये जो पूरा social classification है, it becomes very rigid. It is not rigid in early Vedic age. So write down in bullet points. It coincides with compilation of Samved, Yajurved and Atharvaved. Samved, Yajurved and Atharvaved. सामवेद, यजुर्वेद एंड अथर्ववेद. जैसे वैसे वेदास खुद में बड़े ही बहुत ही रिच सोर्स ऑफ लिटरेचर है. So a lot of times you will find that this is like in one line summary of Vedas. For example, Rig Veda is all about hymns. Sam Veda is often considered the first book of music. जो melody है, first book of melody is Sam Veda is. जो Yajur Ved है, Yajur Ved talks about many rituals and sacrifices. And Atharva Ved talks about many charms and spells to ward off evil. Right? So this will be very simplification of Vedic literature. So Vedas are very rich literature. But when I am, let's say for example, if there is a one line description, that Sam Veda is a book of melody, or Yajur Veda is a book of sacrifices or medicines also. By the way, Yajur Veda also talks about a lot of medicines. Atharva Veda is a book of spells and charms. So this will be simplifications when talking about Vedic literature. But in lot of text you will find that that is how Vedas are described. Anyways, write down next bullet point. Aryans expanded to whole of Ganga, Yamuna, Doab region. Aryans expanded to whole of Ganga, Yamuna, Doab region. Whole of Ganga, Yamuna, Doab region. So basically I'm talking about this entire region here. This entire region is now occupied by Ganga, Yamuna, Doab region. Kurus and Panchals, write down, Kurus and Panchals occupied Delhi and adjoining areas. Occupied Delhi and adjoining areas. Delhi and adjoining areas. The capital of Kurus was Hastinapur. The capital of Kurus was Hastinapur. The capital of Kurus was Hastinapur. Now Hastinapur is what modern day Meerut is. So Hastinapur is often associated with Delhi, but in later Vedic age it actually is Meerut, जो अभी मेरठ है उत्तर प्रदेश में, not very far away from Delhi. And I already told you that Panchals and Kurus, they were very powerful, but they did not remain very powerful in later part of later Vedic age. For example, we do find, जैसे Kurukshetra is again a very very important city in later Vedic age, but we do find evidence of flooding here. That flooding occurred here, and because of that people had to migrate to other location. And maybe this flooding played a very important role that they did not remain very powerful tribe in later period of time. Write down. This age signifies faint beginnings of town life. Faint beginnings. This age signifies faint beginnings of town life. Of town life. Town life. Town were called nagars. So one thing I should clarify here only, that जो second phase of urbanization है, first phase of urbanization was Indus Valley civilization. जो second phase of urbanization है, that coincides with emergence of Mahajanpads, right? But even in later Vedic age, we find some early cities. For example, the earliest of cities are Hastinapur is one of them. Kaushambi is another of them. Kaushambi is again very near to Allahabad. So what Prayagraj in modern times is. So you can write it down. Hastinapur and Kaushambi. Hastinapur and Kaushambi were earliest towns. Hastinapur and Kaushambi were earliest towns. So Hastinapur is what modern day Meerut is. Kaushambi, not exactly entire Prayagraj, but very near to modern Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh. Kaushambi. We'll talk about Mahajanpads. But even in later Vedic age, yes, you are right. Even in later Vedic age, Kaushambi is an important city. Use of iron was much more prevalent. Use of iron was much more prevalent. Use of iron was much more prevalent. It was called Sham or Krishna Ayas. It was called Sham or Krishna Ayas. Give the heading economy. Economy. Write down. Agriculture became the chief economic activity. Agriculture became the chief economic activity. Chief economic activity. Even though animal husbandry continued. Even though animal husbandry continued. Animal husbandry continued. जैसे इसका जो बेस्ट हमको पता कैसे चलता है कि एग्रीकल्चर इज अ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एक्टिविटी इज देयर इज अ वेरी फेमस टेक्स्ट कॉल्ड शतपथ ब्राह्मण, अ ब्राह्मण लिटरेचर. अगेन ब्राह्मण as part of Vedic literature and Brahman, a social classification, are very, very different from each other. It should be very clear. I cannot emphasize it enough. So there is a text called Shatpath Brahman, which is part of Yajur Veda. And Shatpath Brahman talks about lot of things, but one of the most important thing is that it gives details about rituals associated with agriculture. जैसे plowing, sowing of seeds, all of those things are discussed in detail in the text Shatpath Brahman. आप लिखना चाहो तो लिख सकते हो. For example, Shatpath Brahman Shatpath Brahman, part of Yajur Veda. Talks in detail about plowing rituals. Shatpath Brahman talks in detail about plowing rituals. Give the next heading, polity. Polity. हाँ जी. आयरन का डिपेंड करता है आप कहाँ की बात कर रहे हैं. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आप इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन की बात करें, देन इट हैज बीन डिस्कवर्ड इन लेटर वैदिक एज. सो देयर आर टू थिंग्स, इट शुड बी वेरी क्लियर दैट आयरन यूज जो है वो हमको अर्ली वैदिक एज में भी मिलता है. दैट आयरन is used in early Vedic age, but it was not used on a very extensive scale. In fact, any time before later Vedic age, if iron is present in any, let's say for example, any type of archaeological digging, हमको iron अगर मिलता है, तो historians believe and archaeologists believe that this is an accidental presence. कि आपने कोई और mine कर रहे थे, some traces of iron is definitely there, but these are accidental presences. जो एक extensive use of iron है, that extensive use of iron in Indian subcontinent will coincide with later Vedic age. That exclusive weapons or device, or for example any type of equipments to do agriculture made of iron, that occurs in later Vedic age. However, even in early Vedic age, some use of iron is there. उससे पहले अगर जो भी मिलता है, that is only accidental presence of iron, right? So lot of times because of this, this age is also called Iron Age, right? कि जो आयरन एज है दैट बेसिकली सिग्निफाइज लेटर वैदिक एज एज वेल एज महाजनपद पीरियड, बिकॉज इन महाजनपद आयरन जो है बहुत ही एक्सटेंसिव ऑफ कोर्स यूज होता है. राइट, राइट डाउन. ट्राइबल अथॉरिटी बिकेम टेरिटोरियल. ट्राइबल अथॉरिटी बिकेम टेरिटोरियल. Can anyone explain what does it mean? So टेरिटोरी, जो टेरिटरी का कॉन्सेप्ट है अभी तक क्या था, ट्राइब्स आर ड्वेलिंग यूनिट्स, दे आर ड्वेलिंग फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर प्लेस. अब जो टेरिटोरियल कॉन्सेप्ट है, दैट देयर इज अ टेरिटोरियल प्लेस, दैट दिस रीजन बिलोंग्स टू अस, दैट इमर्जेस in later Vedic age. So tribal authority becomes territorial. Next, इसी में polity में लिखना. The position of Rajan became more powerful. The position of Rajan became more powerful. Sabha and Samitis continued in same point. Sabha and Samitis continued. Sabha and Samiti continued, but were controlled by warriors and Brahmins. Warriors and Brahmins. Next, इसी में in polity itself, Bali which was voluntary became obligatory. Bali which was voluntary became obligatory. Bali which was voluntary became obligatory. So by the way, this is also the time when primogeniture एक concept होता है कि जो भी king जब मरेगा तो जो king का जो kingdom है that will go to the eldest son. कि giving kingdom to the eldest son, this idea is called primogeniture. So primogeniture also starts in later Vedic age. Anyways, that's not a very important point, but a very very important point is, write down, kings performed sacrifices to assert his authority. Kings performed sacrifices to assert his authority. Kings performed sacrifices to assert his authority. Again, I'm coming to that. So that is what I was going to discuss. So in last class I also told you, जैसे for example, कोई भी जो ruling class होगा, ruling class के पास हमेशा एक challenge ये होगा to prove that why they are ruling class. उनके पास जो authority है वो कहाँ से आता है. जैसे in modern times it is very clear that authority is there because people are elected by, leaders are elected by people themselves. So in a democratic setup, authority is very clear. But even despite that, they have to take a lot of measures. For example, they have to follow constitution, they have to follow laws, they have to work on welfare of people, right? So that their legitimacy is maintained. Of let's say for example, अगर बहुत भले आप डेमोक्रेटिकली इलेक्टेड हो बट आपके कंट्री में एनार्की चल रहा हो तो क्या होगा, प्रोटेस्ट होगा, जैसे अभी जो श्रीलंका में जब भी हुआ था. सो इवन डेमोक्रेटिकली इलेक्टेड गवर्नमेंट्स डिस्पाइट बीइंग इलेक्टेड बाय पीपल दे कैन फेस रिबेलियंस in any country. So as long as you are following constitution, laws, you are working for the good of people, even though a lot of time corruption is definitely there, but some sense of stability in society is there, you will have authority to rule. And by the way, I'm talking about democratic setup. Now imagine the same thing for kingdoms. Now by the way, I'm talking about early type of kingdoms. अभी तक क्या था, tribal chiefdom था. Now this tribal chiefdom become territorial, no longer a tribal chiefdom. These are smaller kingdoms called janpads, and यही जो janpads हैं बड़े होके महाजनपद हो जाएंगे. तो king के पास हमेशा एक challenge होगा that if king is ruling, then what gives him authority and where does he derive his authority that he belongs to ruling class and he is the ruler, right? And यहाँ पे जो सबसे best help जो kings के पास था वो religion था. That religion and politics went hand in hand. So king often accepted divine authority, that he is representative of God on earth, or lot of times kings themselves like to be called gods, that they themselves are God, they should be worshipped. And then they focused a lot on religious work, things like that. तो ये एक level of authority होगा. जो दूसरा level of authority होगा, that often he will assert his power, that he is the most powerful one in the kingdom through various, like let's say for example celebrations, various type of rituals. जैसे 3 types of sacrifices are mentioned in later Vedic text. The first type of sacrifice is called Rajsuyi Yagya. Now Rajsuyi Yagya, I'm very sure those who have studied or watched Mahabharata, they will remember Rajsuyi Yagya. So Rajsuyi Yagya was mainly during the coronation of a king. So a king, whenever he was coronated, he called all the sages of the country, and these sages blessed him, bestowed him all the power, all the prestige, all the wealth for his kingdom. Right? तो ये पहला यज्ञ है, सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट. जो दूसरा यज्ञ है, that is called वाजपेयी यज्ञ. Now वाजपेयी यज्ञ was that king entered into a chariot race, that there will be chariot of king as well as his kingsmen, जो भी सेनानीज होंगे. बट इसका जो रिजल्ट है पहले से लीक हो रखा है कि इस चैरियट रेस में जो विक्टोरियस होगा वो किंग का चैरियट होगा, वो पहले से डिसाइडेड है. राइट? किंग चैरियट वाज मेड टू विन अगेन टू असर्ट हिज अथॉरिटी. एंड थर्ड यज्ञ, अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, इज अश्वमेध यज्ञ. नाउ अश्वमेध यज्ञ वाज बेसिकली फॉर पॉलिटिकल एक्सपेंशन. दैट किंग ऑफन left his royal horse along with some of the people, and this royal horse, wherever he ran uninterrupted, that nobody is capturing it, all that territory belonged to king. Let's say for example if somebody has captured it, then there will be a war. King has to assert his authority, king has to emerge victorious in that war, only then he can claim that this region belongs to me. So many type of Ashwamedh yajna has been mentioned in many texts, Vedic text also, many epics. For example, both Ramayana and Mahabharata talks about Ashwamedh yajna, and many Puranas also mention Ashwamedh yajna. And by the way, Ashwamedh yajna has a proper religious starting point, but Ashwamedh yajna becomes very, very popular by later rulers also. For example, I'm going to talk about when Mauryas decline. Mauryas were, जैसे Ashoka was patron of Buddhism. So when last ruler of Mauryan kingdom is killed by Pushyamitra Shung, who is a Brahmin, the first thing he does is he organizes Ashwamedh yajna. Similarly, another great political conqueror of ancient India is Samudragupta. Samudragupta organizes Ashwamedh yajna. Many southern kings also organizes Ashwamedh yajna. So ये जो sacrifices है, these sacrifices become very important for kings to assert their authority, that they have either divine representation or they themselves are gods. Right? So they themselves are god तो इंडिया में नहीं मिलता. जो for example there are few kingdoms जहाँ पे kings may have claimed to be gods themselves, but in most of the cases kings consider themselves to be representative of gods on the earth. So write down. 3 type of sacrifices are mentioned. 3 type of sacrifices are mentioned. 3 type of sacrifices are mentioned. Rajsuya, Rajsuya, एक लाइन में लिख लेना. It occurred during coronation. It occurred during coronation of a king. It occurred during coronation of a king. So Rajsuya में क्या होगा, बहुत सारे sages will be called, and these sages are going to bless the king. That supreme power belongs to you, right? Next is Vajpeya. इसमें एक लाइन लिख लेना. It was a chariot race. It was a chariot race where royal chariot belonging to the king, royal chariot belonging to the king was made to win, royal chariot belonging to the king was made to win the race against his kinsmen. Made to win the race against his kinsmen. Against his and third is Ashwamedh. Ashwamedh. It signified, write down, it signified unquestioned control over an area. It signified unquestioned control over an area in which the royal horse ran uninterrupted, in which the royal horse ran uninterrupted. Uninterrupted. Kinsman basically means belonging to people of king. Basically, I'm talking about people of king. So better word in fact kinsman और kingsman में एक थोड़ा सा difference है. तो आप एक kingsman लिख सकते हो. A better word here can be kingsman. Kin basically means belonging to one type of clan. I'm talking about a type of people, group of people. So three very famous sacrifices are mentioned in Vedic text. Write down in next bullet point. Kings appointed an officer to collect tax and tributes. King appointed an officer to collect tax and tributes. Tax and tribute. This officer was called Sangrahitri, sorry. This officer was called Sangrahitri. He still did not maintain a standing army. He still did not maintain a standing army. Standing army. I will again repeat. Maintaining standing army basically mean that you have a dedicated force जिसका काम सिर्फ और सिर्फ लड़ाई करना है. अब आपको क्या करना है? You have to feed them, you have to give them regular salaries. Cash तो अभी तक कोई concept start होता नहीं है, but चलो in kind also if you are paying them salary in kind or some sort of assigning land to them, ये सारी चीजें बाद में merge होती हैं. So king still did not maintain a standing army. हाँ जी. हाँ, there is a mention of Senani. So Senani is a very important commander in chief, but that does not mean that you have like dedicated army, right? So you can write down next bullet point. Was there any kind of? So definitely, for example, if you have to enter into a warfare, then you are going to call upon your people that we are going for a warfare. People may volunteer, king may ask also. तो ये जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज होंगे जो इंपॉर्टेंट, फॉर एग्जांपल किंग का जो काउंसिल होगा उनका रोल होगा कि आर्मी को एक्यूमुलेट करे, बट एक स्टैंडिंग आर्मी नहीं होगा. एक स्टैंडिंग आर्मी जो बिल्कुल रेडी टू वॉर है. यू हैव टू वेट फॉर प्रॉपर organization of army. You are going to call upon your people and they are going to participate in the war. Write down next bullet point. King had to eat along. King often ate along with his people. King often ate along with his people and did not hesitate to farming. Did not hesitate to farming. जैसे एक बड़ा फेमस ऋग्वेदा में डिस्क्रिप्शन है that king ate rice along with his people, and rice के लिए there is a very interesting word here. Rice is called vrihi. Sorry? हाँ, let's take a break here. King often ate rice along with his people. Rice was called vrihi. आप ब्रैकेट में कहीं पे लिख सकते हो. Rice was called vrihi. Let's take a break here. हाँ जी. Who's in which context? Line पूरा statement बोलो. With his people. हाँ, तो ये normal people. When I'm saying that with his people, no. I'm talking about his praja. Normal populace of his kingdom. Let's take a break. After the break, we'll talk about two major headings: religion and society. Break के बाद question पूछते हैं. Hello. So we discussed the political setup. Any questions till now from whatever we have discussed? You had a question. You require resources for it. So question is that what can be the reasons? For example, we do find important names like Senani, as he mentioned. So Senani is perhaps commander in chief, but to maintain a proper standing army, you require huge amount of resources. हाँ सो डिस्कवरी ऑफ आयरन से फिर क्या होगा? सो स्टैंडिंग आर्मी, सिंपल सा स्टैंडिंग आर्मी मेंटेन करने के लिए आपके पास इतना रिसोर्स होना चाहिए, इतना फ्लो ऑफ टैक्स होना चाहिए that you are able to feed that army and you are able to pay them regularly, most monthly basis, whatever basis it is, but you are able to do that. If you are able to do that, you can have a standing army. So we do find that standing army becomes a very important concept in Mahajanpad age, but in abhi tak standing army jo hai maintain karna, that does not emerge. So simple reason is that you require resources, you require food grain to feed them, to pay them regularly. Anyways, any other question? हाँ जी. Simply it means that tribal assembly is continued. That is not the key word. यहाँ पे जो key word ये नहीं है, इससे जो मैंने लाइन लिखाया था उसका की टेक अवे ये नहीं है कि सभा समिति विधाता जो है वो तीनों कंटिन्यू करता है कि नहीं. इसका की टेक अवे ये है कि दे कंटिन्यूड, बट इनका जो अभी तक क्या था, that everybody could attend. For example, Vidhata could be attended by the entire tribe. That is not true. First, and even whoever people could attend, जो king का power है वो more and more absolute होते चले जाएगा. That king will have the final say, and king often will not be guided by what assemblies are taking decision. And in the very first case, assemblies are not being participated by all sections of society, right? That is the key takeaway. हाँ जी. I told you that wish का exact meaning करना बहुत मुश्किल है कि wish का exact meaning क्या है. Wherever the meaning is clear, for example, the term kul also. The term kul is rarely mentioned in Rig Veda, right? But we do know that the term kul is very important in even current context, and the term kul becomes important in later Vedic text. Similarly, wish का exact meaning clear नहीं है, but wish could have been an administrative division perhaps above Grama or below Grama. But exactly where in this administrative division it will lie, इसको आंसर करना, if anyone is trying to answer it, that is just a guess, that you are trying to guess it. Because exact interpretation of the meaning of the term wish, and where exactly, we do know that it is some type of unit, right, some type of tribe unit, but exactly what level, that we do not know. Okay? Anyway, so I was talking about two more things which if we discuss, we will be done with later Vedic age. So the first thing is that society. Let's talk about what type of society we are talking about. So I already told you that the Varna system hai, that becomes much more rigid in the later Vedic age. Early Vedic age mein jo Varna system hai, it was fluid in the sense that social mobility was there. Social mobility, just in case if somebody is not very clear, social mobility simply means that a person can become part of another Varna depending upon his talent, depending upon his profession or whatever, right? So social mobility करने के बहुत तरीके होते हैं, जैसे जिसका सोशियोलॉजी ऑप्शनल है, फॉर एग्जांपल आप या इवन सोसाइटी जब आपकी क्लासेस होंगी आपको बताएंगे एक प्रोसेस होता है संस्कृताइजेशन का. देयर इज अ प्रोसेस कॉल्ड संस्कृताइजेशन. और संस्कृताइजेशन बेसिकली मीन्स इज दैट पीपल ऑफ लोअर सोशल क्लासेस ऑफन adopt practices of upper classes for social mobility. कि जो practices of upper classes हैं, especially those who are, let's say for example, those who have become rich, right? So they will start adopting practices of upper social classes to enhance their social prestige and for social mobility. So anyways, that is a very separate topic. All I am saying is that in early Vedic age, social mobility was there. A person का जो identity है वो birth से fix नहीं होगा, but in later Vedic age, वो जो आइडेंटिटी है वो बर्थ से फिक्स हो जाएगा कि आप जिस फैमिली में पैदा हुए हैं उस फैमिली जो भी सोशल डिवीजन को बिलोंग करती है आपका आइडेंटिटी फिर वही है. सो योर आइडेंटिटी इज फिक्स्ड बाय योर बर्थ नाउ. सो वर्ना सिस्टम बिकम्स मच मोर रिजिड, राइट? अनदर इंपॉर्टेंट सिग्निफिकेंस in society is that the status and position of women in the society definitely declines. So for example, women could not participate in assemblies, we discussed that. There is another thing. So for example, we talked about two sages in early Vedic age, Vashishta and Vishwamitra. Now Vashishta is often called a more conservative sage. Vishwamitra is more liberal. By the way, जो वशिष्ठ विश्वामित्र का जो conflict है plus cooperation है, it is like this text is mentioned in many Puranas that Vashishta Vishwamitra are fighting with each other, and that fight lot of times actually becomes bloody. And at some times Vashishta and Vishwamitra of course have like lot of respect for each other. For example, that is what Ramayana का जो final recension है, यहाँ पे Vashishta and Vishwamitra, they both have lot of respect for each other, right? So anyways, Vashishta and Vishwamitra are important sages in many epics, but they are very important in Vedic ages also. So as it is mentioned that, for example, Vishwamitra wants to expand the Aryan fold, and he comes up with Gayatri Mantra, that anyone who can recite Gayatri Mantra will be given higher social status. But this recitation of Gayatri Mantra is not available to Shudras, and it is also not available to women. Another concept which emerges in later Vedic age, that is the concept of Dvij. Dvij basically means a person who is twice born. Now what twice born basically means is that once where your natural born occurs, and another is where you get certain sanskar. There is a word called sanskar. And how do you get sanskar? Through a ritual called Upanayan. So many in North India, I'm very sure you know about Upanayan or Yagyopavit ya Janeu jisko hum bolte hain. That this sacred thread which you wear, that wearing of sacred thread which is called Upanayan sanskar, that signifies Dvij. That first time you are born and now you have attained the status of Dvij, you are twice born, you have sanskar, you have to follow those sanskar throughout your life. Up this status of Dvij is again is not given to Shudras, right? So it is mainly for Brahmins and Kshatriyas, but even Vaishyas are given this right, but Shudras are not given the right of Dvij, and women belonging to all sections of society, they are not given the right of Dvij. So there is a social decline in terms of the position of Shudras or even the position of women in the society. Another very interesting feature which develops into later Vedic ages, this concept of ashram. Now what this concept of ashram basically means is that it talks about that a very well-behaved person, or perhaps a respectable person, is going to divide his life into 4 phases. The first phase is called brahmacharya. Brahmacharya basically means that you are going to get education, that is for learning phase. ये जो आपका पूरा phase है वो learning phase है. Then you enter into grihasth phase, जो आपका matrimonial phase है, that you are going to have a household, you are going to have kids, you are going to ensure that your kids have a good upbringing. Then the third phase is called Vanprastha phase, where you are going to renounce your family, but it is not complete renunciation. Like you are going to give important decision making power to your sons and daughters. They will have major role, and you will gradually it will lead to a partial renunciation, कि आप थोड़ा भक्ति पे ज़्यादा focus करोगे, जो worldly affairs हैं उससे आपका जो relation होगा वो धीरे धीरे कम होते चले जाएगा. Your main focus is now on religious things, and of course the last is called you are going to Vanprastha, that you are going to completely renounce the world. Now one thing should be very clear, that ऐसा नहीं कि कोई ये law है, this is just an accepted thing, that this is how one can behave. So जो पूरा ये concept है, this is part of dharm shastras, that this is how a well behaved person is going to divide his life into 4 categories. So ये जो ashram system है, that also emerges into later Vedic ages. In terms of next discussion, that what happens to religion, what happens to worships, so that also changes a lot. For example, जो eminence of gods like Indra and Agni है, that eminence is lost. Now important gods are Pashupati, important gods are Prajapati, important gods are Vishnu, like they emerge as the major gods. Apart from that, जो praying method है, that also changes. Initially the praying was all tribe coming together, reciting chants, but now the praying method has much more ritualistic significance. Sacrifices are much more important. The concept of dakshina, that is giving dakshina to Brahmins, that is much more important compared to reciting prayers and chanting prayers, right? So that is a major development in religion also. So just write down all of these things. Give this heading society. society. Write down in first bullet point. The Varna classification became more rigid. The Varna classification became more rigid. Became more rigid. That is social mobility. Social mobility was very difficult to attain. Social mobility was very difficult to attain. And again, this is very different from early Vedic age. In early Vedic age, social mobility was possible. But here it is now nearly impossible. Write down in next bullet point. The position of women also declined in the society. Position of women declined in the society. Declined in the society. They could not attain tribal assemblies. They could not attain tribal assemblies. Tribal assemblies. Next, the concept of Upnayan. The concept of Upnayan, which provided the status of Dvij, which provided the status of Dvij, twice born, which provided the status of Dvij, emerged. The concept of Upnayan, which provided the status of Dvij, emerged. So Upnayan is a proper ritualistic ceremony where you get to wear this sacred thread. And frankly, this sacred thread ceremony occurs in two phases. The first is during Brahmacharya, and where you wear 3 threads, and then another 3 threads you get to wear when you get married. So that is your grihast life jo start hota hai. So the sacred thread ceremony basically attained, you gave you the status of Dvij, twice born. Right on next bullet point. The Aryan fold increased. The Aryan fold increased. People who could recite Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra became part of Aryan fold. Became part of Aryan fold. And इसी में एक लाइन लिख लेना, both Shudras and women, both Shudras and women were denied Upnayan and Gayatri Mantra. Both Shudras and women were denied Upnayan and Gayatri Mantra. Denied Upnayan and Gayatri Mantra. Write down next bullet point in same heading. Institution of Gotra emerged. Institution of Gotra emerged. Now this is also a very interesting development. गोत्र अगर आप इसका लिटरल ट्रांसलेशन देखोगे गोत्र का, सो इट कम्स फ्रॉम द वर्ड गो. सो बेसिकली इट मीन्स दैट अ प्लेस वेयर इंटायर कैटल ऑफ क्लैन इज केप्ट. इसका जो लिटरल ट्रांसलेशन होगा, दैट इंटायर कैटल, ऑल द काउज एंड buffaloes and oxes, all of them are kept at one particular location. So literal translation is this, but the term gotra basically signifies a common origin, that people who had a common origin. So the institution of gotra first, and second, gotra exogamy, that in same gotra marriage will not be allowed. So the concept of Gotra exogamy also emerged in later Vedic age. आप लिख सकते हो in one line. It literally means a place where cattle belonging to the entire clan are kept. It literally means a place. It literally means a place where cattle belonging to entire clan are kept. Entire clan are kept. It later signified, write down, it later signified descent from a common ancestor, descent from a common ancestor, which led to practice of Gotra exogamy. Gotra exogamy. Exogamy basically means that in same Gotra marriage will not occur. जैसे इंडिया में कास्ट एंडोगमी है. एंडोगमी मीन्स सेम कास्ट में मैरिज होगा बट सेम गोत्र में नहीं होगा, राइट. एंड एक लास्ट पॉइंट लिख लेना. द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ आश्रम ऑल्सो इमर्ज्ड. The concept of ashram also emerged. The concept of ashram also emerged. A person's life can be divided into, इसी में in same bullet point, a person's life can be divided into 4 ashrams. 4 ashrams. Brahmacharya, to attain knowledge. Grihasth, matrimonial life. Vanprasth, partial renunciation, and sannyas. Complete renunciation. Complete renunciation. Again, it should be very clear that this classification is only indicatory in nature. Like, it is not obligatory. Like, no one is obliged to exactly perform all of those things. Especially sannyas, तो बिल्कुल ही ऐसा नहीं है. You have few instances of sannyas. For example, in many cases in Mahabharata and Ramayana also you find this mention of taking sannyas by kings who became very old. And एक last heading दे लेना in later Vedic age. Religion and philosophy. हाँ जी. One example of? Example in the sense? How it will occur. So again, as I told you, for example, as person becomes old enough that your sons and daughters, they have been married, they have their own household. So one example can be that in household decision making, you do not have much role. First, second, आपका main focus जैसे for example, because you are the male member of योर फैमिली, जो भी रिलीजन से रिलेटेड चीजें हैं, भक्ति से रिलेटेड चीजें हैं, ऑल ऑफ दोज थिंग्स, उसका रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी आपके पास होगा. सो इवन दो यू आर पार्ट ऑफ द हाउस होल्ड, you are not interested in the worldly affairs, that how to deal with your neighbors, और हमको अपने फैमिली का प्रेस्टीज बढ़ाना है, वेल्थ एक्यूमुलेट करना है, ये सारी चीजें आपको नहीं करनी है. आप एक तरीके से रिटायर्ड लाइफ जी रहे हो कि आप जाओ जो प्लेसेस हैं, रिलीजियस प्लेसेस हैं, वहां पे जाके जाओ, आप भक्ति करो, इस पे फोकस है आपका. सो ग्रेजुअली यू आर ट्राइंग टू लीव द वर्ल्डली अफेयर एंड यू आर ट्राइंग टू गो टुवर्ड्स bhakti. And in sannyas, you completely renounce the world. You go to a nearby forest. You live like a sannyasi for rest of your life once you are old enough. That is the concept. That is the difference between sannyas. Ashram is again, that's a very good question. Chalcolithic period I have not forgotten. Like, why do you have to keep reminding? I have not forgotten Chalcolithic period. Don't worry, that's a very small topic. जब भी मुझे थोड़ा सा time, I will get, whenever I get like for example half an hour, I will discuss Chalcolithic period along with another topic of pottery culture. Don't worry about that. And ashram restricted for Shudras. Yes, so ashram is mainly meant for the upper sections of the society. Hanji, somebody had a question. That will be, I frankly, I do not think I have information to answer that question. His question is that concept of moksha, जो salvation का concept है, is it exclusive only to male members? I don't think so. So even if, let's say for example, it started for, let's say, I do not know frankly in the starting if it is for only male members. I do not know that. So I will not try to answer that question. But definitely in later part it is for all members of society. It is for both male and female members of the society without any doubt. But how did it originate, or is it only exclusive to male members? If I have to guess, and again I will repeat, I do not have answer to that question, but if I have to guess, even in the origin it is for both male and female members. But again, I am only trying to guess here. Hanji. So not exactly. So for example, his question is that, is there any fixed time period for ashram system? Not exactly, but more or less there can be a range. Like for example, first 15, 16 or 18 years of life as brahmacharya life, and then next few decades, let's say for example up to your 40s or 50s, जो है वो पूरा गृहस्थ life है. Your 60s or 70s, आपका partial renunciation है 1%. Finally in late, when you are like on the verge, when you are an old age, then you take sannyas. So not exactly a fixed time period, but it can be classified in terms of range. So anyways, in terms of religion philosophy, just write down few things here. Sacrifices became more important than reciting prayers. Sacrifices became more important than reciting prayers. Prayers. Large-scale sacrifices occurred, which also included animal sacrifices. Just for example, I am going to say something controversial here. I know it is controversial, especially given in recent context, but even many like right-wing scholars have believed that. Swami Vivekanand or even Savarkar believed that, for example, early Aryans, the earliest example of Aryans hai, they ate cow meat. Now cow definitely attained a very, very sacred status, without any doubt. That does happen. It may have occurred because maybe cows were killed for diet, and because of that milk and many other products they may have declined, whatever reason. But cow did attain a very sacred status. But we do find evidence, or we can conclude based on textual evidence, that even sacrifice of cow was not unknown or not like foreign to initial Aryan tribes, right? So in fact, there is a very famous term called Gomedh. जैसे अश्वमेध है, वैसे ही there is a very famous term called Gomedh. There is a lot of debate that Gomedh actually meant cow sacrifice. Very similar to Ashwamedh actually meant horse sacrifice. The horse, when it returned, it was sacrificed. Right, so anyways, I know that this is a controversial topic, but it should be very clear that exactly when, we do not know, but it should be very clear that cow does become a very important sacred animal. But in the earliest form, even cow sacrifice is, ऐसा नहीं है कि ये बहुत alien concept है. Right. Anyways, sacrificer was called Jajman.
But it is not contradictory that Rig Veda itself says that killing a cow is the biggest sin on earth. Like something of this state.
So I will मैं इस चीज को I'm like not going to jump into this debate. देखो मैं यहाँ पे कोई ओपिनियन शेप करने के लिए नहीं हूँ आपके. जो चीजें टेक्स्ट बुक में दे रखी है, आजकल ना बड़ा कॉशियस होके वो चीजें बोलनी पड़ती है. नेवर नो कौन आपका क्लिप बना के ऐसे अपलोड कर रहा है ट्विटर में. सो आई एम जस्ट सेइंग that whatever is mentioned in text, that is all I am saying. Okay, so I am not going to jump into this debate like ये है counterpoint ये है. This is mentioned in text. That is all I am saying. Anyways, sacrificer was called Jajman. Sacrificer was called Jajman. Sacrificer was called Jajman. Indra and Agni, next bullet point. Indra and Agni lost their importance. Indra and Agni lost their importance. Lost their importance. Next, Prajapati, Rudra and Vishnu. Prajapati, Rudra and Vishnu. Prajapati, Rudra and Vishnu emerged as main gods. Emerged as main gods. Early signs of idol worship. Early signs of idol worship is found in later Vedic age. Early signs of idol worship is found in later Vedic age. Some social orders, write down, some social orders worshipped their own deities. Some social orders worshipped their own deities. Worshipped their own deities. For example, Shudras worshipped a god called Pushan. Shudras worshipped a god called Pushan. Who looked after cattle. Who looked after cattle. And एक last point लिख लेना यहाँ पे. Towards the end of Vedic period, towards the end of Vedic period, there was a strong reaction against priestly domination. There was a strong reaction against priestly domination. There was a strong reaction against priestly domination. Priestly domination basically means the Brahminical supremacy in the society and the way how religion is being used. So there was a reaction against that. Upanishads were compiled. Upanishads were compiled. Upanishads were compiled which criticized rituals, and laid emphasis on right belief and right knowledge. Laid emphasis on right belief and right knowledge. So this is the entire discussion about early and later Vedic age. Few things should be very clear. Economy abhi barter system hai. Barter system is still very prevalent. But, and by the way, I know that this is a like very simplification of lot of complex things which may have occurred in the society. So just to appreciate this fact, for example, there are many questions. Let's say one question is that what could be the reasons regarding decline of status of woman in the later Vedic age? That will be as good guess what you are going to do as it will be mine. In fact, जो पूरा patriarchy है, patriarchy has been a phenomena which across space and time, patriarchy as a phenomena is prevalent. Right? Any place of the world, at any point of time, patriarchy has been a prominent phenomena in many culture. And there are many reasons, people try to explain this with many reasons that why exactly it has occurred. And frankly, you can find counterpoints to all of those reasons. Just for example, the most accepted theory is that because male members, physically, जो physical attribute है, that males are generally more powerful, like they have more strength compared to women. And even during hunting gathering age जो है, जो male members, उनकी responsibility रही होगी to hunt, right? So even in, for example, when agriculture started, जो work on farms है, that may have been, or जो wars हैं, they were mainly done by male members. And because of that, maybe जो classification of work है, that household work will belong to women and outside work will belong to men, that may have played a very important role. This is the most accepted theory, but इसके भी बहुत सारे criticisms हैं, that even that cannot be applied across many cultures. So this will not be, frankly, if I try to like pinpoint that reasons why it may have occurred, those reasons will be, you can also think of those reasons, I am also going to think those reasons. We have, like, frankly, do not have exact reasons that why exactly it does occur, and especially in later Vedic phase, why it occurs. Human sacrifice is not, human sacrifice जो है ऐसा कुछ ऐसे मिलता नहीं हमको. Human sacrifices के कुछ examples जो हैं, in Mahajanpad period, for example, in few places, historians believe that human sacrifices may have occurred. But human sacrifices in later Vedic age, we do not find it. There is another question. Again, please do not post your questions on response portal because there is a very good chance that I am going to skip. I will not be able to look at those questions. Try to send your question to classroom coordinator. That will be very helpful. But there is a question by Karthik that whatever developments we are studying, are they primarily in the context of Aryans? The answer is yes. Why? The answer is because Aryan culture, by the way, this is also very important that ये जो हमने पिछले 500 सालों में जो हमने चेंजेस देखा है, स्पेशली फॉर एग्जांपल हाउ सोसाइटी एंड हाउ रिलीजन इज चेंजिंग, दैट इज नॉट बिकॉज ओनली the Aryan practices, but it is also because how Aryans are interacting with other tribes and how those other practices may have played a very important role in emergence of a new type of beliefs, new set of beliefs, which includes earlier beliefs also as well as later beliefs. So the reason when I am saying that we are studying about Aryans, because जो Aryan culture है, and especially जो Aryan tribe जो initially एक जो linguistic tribe जो था, उसके साथ आइडेंटिफाई करना, मेनी मोर ट्राइब्स आइडेंटिफाइड देमसेल्फ विथ आर्यन ट्राइब. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दैट वी स्टडी इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ आर्यंस, एंड बिकॉज दे wrote extensively, they had the most impact on culture of the subcontinent. Because of that we are reading about Aryan tribes. Your last question is that don't we have traces of other tribes? We definitely have. We have a lot of tribes even today. They may have existed for like thousands of years. जैसे सबसे बढ़िया जो example है, many tribes of Andaman and Nicobar, they never came in contact with any outside tribe. तो जैसे for example, if any group of India can claim that they are the original Indians, they will be some tribes of Andaman and Nicobar, because they never came in contact with many other tribes of the world. Apart from that, no one else can claim that they are the original Indians. And even they are also, again, even they are also a result of out of migration from Africa. So we have traces of other tribes, but their impact on historical development is less compared to Aryan tribes, and because of that, there is so much focus on tribes of Arya. Sangeeta is saying that Nishka gold and silver coins like Satmana and Krishnala were used as a medium of exchange. So these are developments. Coinage as a system of development. अभी जो सबसे accepted belief ये है that it happens in Mahajanpad age. In Vedic age जो है coinage, for example, जो coinage as a system है that does not develop. Anyways, we have some time. And there is a very small topic, Chalcolithic age. Give this heading. Let's finish it so that nobody else post किस Chalcolithic age जो है रह गया है. So give this heading, Chalcolithic period. हाँ जी. हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल 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 बिल्कुल. So for example जो बुद्धा है and जो महावीर हैं. So for example बुद्धा did not believe in this fourfold social classification. महावीर जो Jainism है that is silent on the issue. But even Jainism does not believe per se, but Jainism is not highly critical of it. So silent on this issue. We'll talk about Buddhism and Jainism even though Buddhism, Jainism will be taught in detail in art and culture classes. But I will discuss about basic tenets of Buddhism and Jainism. Anyways, give this heading Chalcolithic age. So Chalcolithic age में बस दो चीजें clear होनी चाहिए. The first thing is that why do we use this term Chalcolithic? So lithic basically means stone. Chalco basically will represent copper. So copper was the first metal which was discovered by human beings. But this discovery of first metal was very, very significant because agriculture which already had started, now it started occurring on a much larger scale, on much more extensive scale. And in fact, I told you in the last classes also, that without extensive agriculture or without agricultural surplus, we can never imagine a kingdom, a civilization, or this large empire. So agriculture has to be the prerequisite economic activity. And based on that, all other type of economic activity, and economic activity will lead to all these other developments into, let's say for example, different type of traditions, and even economy has a direct impact on culture and society, right? So जो Chalcolithic age है, this is very significant because from Neolithic, which is often called Neolithic Revolution, and why it is called Neolithic Revolution, I told you, because agriculture starts here, right? And in Chalcolithic age, it occurs on a much more larger scale. So few things, two things you should know. First is, what are the features of Chalcolithic age? And these are frankly very simple features. For example, on a much larger scale agriculture, more developed pottery, more developed religious ideas. For example, how do you deal with your dead bodies? Mortuary analysis हमेशा important होगा कि dead body के साथ लोग कैसे treat कर रहे हैं. So that is a very important part of your religious idea. So features, and second thing which you should know is that what are the major Chalcolithic sites into India, and few names will be important here. That's it. If you know this much, it will be enough. So just write down few things here. Chalcolithic age. अलग अलग. So for example, it can be as early as 3000 BC, as late as 600 BC. So Chalcolithic age को जो exactly अगर आप time period देखोगे, so time period can be from 3000 to 500 BC. However, 3000 to 500 BC will not be exactly at one location. At some location it occurred at around 2000 BC, at another location at 3000 BC. So overall it can be categorized from 3000 to 500 BC. आप mention लिख सकते हो bracket में, from 3000 to 500 BC. Write down bullet points. Copper emerged. Copper was the first metal. Copper was the first metal which was used by human beings. Which was used by human beings. Which was used by human beings. The term Chalcolithic signifies, the term Chalcolithic signifies use of both copper tools and stone tools. use of both copper tools and stone tools. Following features can be attributed. Following features can be attributed. Can be attributed to Chalcolithic age. Chalcolithic age. Write down in bullet points. First, cattle rearing and agriculture on a much larger scale. Cattle rearing and agriculture on a much larger scale. On a much larger scale. जैसे जब हम नियोलिथिक में बात करते हैं, नियोलिथिक में जो मेजर क्रॉप था वो राइस था. But now you have not only rice, wheat, bajra, but along with that there are many pulses such as black gram. So many pulses are also produced during Chalcolithic age. You do not have to ragi, bajra, jowar, all of those things are important food grains of Chalcolithic age. So you do not have to go into such detail. Next, well-developed pottery. Well-developed pottery. जो पूरा पॉटरी का डिस्कशन है, आई एम गोइंग टू कंटिन्यू दिस डिस्कशन अगेन. इट विल टेक अबाउट 15-20 मिनट्स. कोई ऐसे ही क्लास होगा, लास्ट में कुछ टाइम बचेगा, हम डिस्कस कर लेंगे. सो पॉटरी एक्चुअली आइडेंटिफाइज दैट व्हाट टाइप ऑफ कल्चरल एंड इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट. जैसे जब आप आर एस शर्मा पढ़ोगे, सो लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स यू आर गोइंग टू रीड टर्म्स लाइक नदन ब्लैक पॉलिश्ड वेयर कल्चर और ऑक्रा कलर्ड पॉटरी और ग्रे वेयर्ड पॉटरी, राइट. सो ये जो when you hear this term, as for example, if R. Sharma mentions that this site belongs to northern black polished ware culture, so what basically it signifies that iron has been discovered, and we are talking about early rural settlements as well as early town settlement, but of iron age. Wherever it is mentioned NBPW, northern black polished ware, it means that iron has been discovered. And यही में अगर painted grey ware settlement हो, PGW, so it signifies iron age but proper of urban areas, that now urbanization has also started. So pottery often is associated with what level of cultural and economic development you are talking about. So it should not confuse you. For example, अगर आप Chalcolithic age की बात करेंगे, so very famous pottery will be black and red ware pottery or ochre colored pottery. So I'm going to talk about this classification of pottery and how one type of pottery is associated with one type of culture, but I will do that in later classes. In next bullet point, rural settlements are characterized by mud bricks, दो टाइप के ब्रिक होते हैं, एक तो फायर बेक्ड ब्रिक होता है और एक होता है मड ब्रिक. So rural settlements are characterized by mud bricks. However, one village was now constituted by many households. One village now constituted many households. So जैसे एक विलेज में हो सकता है 40-50 हाउस होल्ड आपको हो. Next bullet point, people worshipped clay images. People worshipped clay images. Clay images. So जैसे एक बहुत famous clay image जो मिलता है हमको, एक goddess का मिलता है, and lot of historians believe that it represents mother goddess, earth as a goddess. Art and craft became more popular. Art and craft became more popular. For example, copper smelting and stone work developed during this period. Developed during this period. People also knew spinning and weaving. People also knew spinning and weaving. Spinning and weaving. So spinning and weaving is very important for clothing. जो modern cloth manufacturing है, that started in Chalcolithic age. But इसी में एक line लिख लेना. But the art of writing was not known. Art of writing was not known. And a last point in the same point, Chalcolithic people were fond of ornaments. Chalcolithic people were fond of Chalcolithic people were fond of ornaments. Ornaments. Give the heading important Chalcolithic sites in India. Important Chalcolithic sites in India. अब जैसे एक आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट एक टर्म यूज करते हैं कल्चर. नाउ कल्चर हैज अ वेरी वेरी डिफरेंट मीनिंग इन कॉमन पैरेलेंस. जब हम डे टू डे लाइफ में जब हम कल्चर यूज करते हैं, दैट हैज अ वेरी डिफरेंट मीनिंग वर्सेस व्हेन द टर्म कल्चर इज यूज्ड इन आर्कियोलॉजी. So in archaeology, culture basically signifies same type of artifacts we are talking about, which was produced at one particular location. So same type of settlement. And how do you know about same type of settlement? Because of the similarity in artifacts. So for example, जो Chalcolithic sites होंगे, they will be called with different culture. जैसे there is a very famous culture of Rajasthan which is called Ahar culture. So there is a place in Rajasthan called Ahar, which is a very very important Chalcolithic site. So when you hear the term Ahar culture or Jorwe culture, just remember that these are, ये जो culture term है यहाँ पे archaeological वाला जो archaeology वाला culture है वो culture है, not the culture which we use in our common day-to-day life. So both have a different meaning here. Is that clear? So culture, for example, in real day-to-day life, mein culture can mean like every aspects of our life. All the aspects of our life is what culture is all about. Culture in archaeology will mean that there is similarity in artifacts in a particular region, right? So we have, for example, we have a Jorwe culture of Maharashtra, Ahar culture of Rajasthan. So these are important Chalcolithic site. So write down in bullet points. First is Ahar. Ahar is in Banas Valley, Rajasthan. Very very important Chalcolithic culture. Sorry? Ahar culture, A-H-A-R, Banas Valley, B-A-N-A-S. Banas Valley, Rajasthan. Similarly, there is a very famous place in Maharashtra called Daimabad. Write down. Daimabad in Ahmednagar, Maharashtra. Daimabad, Ahmednagar, Maharashtra. Now, another very famous place of Maharashtra is Songaon and Nasik, which is Songaon and Nasik. This is also in Maharashtra. And one of the most famous culture of Maharashtra is called Jorwe culture, that is found in a place called Nevasa. So Jorwe culture next is Malwa in Madhya Pradesh. बहुत बार इसको मालवा कल्चर बोलते हैं, मालवा कल्चर ऑफ मध्य प्रदेश। सोनपुर इन बिहार, सोनपुर, a place near Patliputra, Patna. Sonpur in Bihar. Mahishdal in West Bengal. Mahishdal in West Bengal. And Nauda Toli on Narmada. Nauda Toli in Narmada. You may ask a very, very important question that we are not discussing. Sites of South India here. Right, and the reason is I will discuss this जब हम southern history के बारे में discuss करेंगे. That in southern, especially in Tamil Nadu and region of Andhra Pradesh, from Neolithic, जो next phase of prehistoric period है, this is called megalithic. And megalithic is not because of any type of metal, but it is actually because of what type of burial practice was adopted. So I will talk about megalithic culture as a prehistoric period of South India. जब हम South Indian जो चोला चिरस पांड्यास पढ़ेंगे उसके पहले we will discuss that. Perhaps in next दो class बाद, right? So I will see you guys in the next class. We will talk about emergence of Mahajanpad and early dynasties which ruled Magad kingdom. Similarity of artifact. In archaeology culture का मतलब होगा similarity of artifact. कि similar से artifact हमको मिलते हैं किसी खास लोकेशन पे, तो व्हाट इट सिग्निफाइज कि सेम टाइप ऑफ इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी है, सेम टाइप ऑफ सोशल सेटअप है. तो सिमिलैरिटी ऑफ आर्टिफैक्ट इज द मेजर क्राइटेरिया व्हेन वी यूज द टर्म कल्चर इन आर्कियोलॉजी. ओके.